Welcome to the details. Now, days after her speech was impaired from the trauma of suffering sexual abuse at the hands of two self-styled pastors for 4 months, 18-year-old Precious has begun psychological therapy. Her father told JoyNews last week she was threatening to take her life, but that has changed after her first session with a therapist. Aflao Kidnap has more in this report.
As soon as you start talking about that thing, she becomes wild. She now easily gets angry. She wrote something which was a little bit disturbing. I gave it to the doctor that she feel like taking her life.
A desperate father of an abused 18-year-old speaking up about the fears of a girl who was kidnapped and raped by two Nigerian men. The experience of a 4-month-long ordeal was eating her up.
They took me around.
From one place to another?
Yes, but they never gave me access to anybody, to the people, or to phone or anything. They followed me anywhere, anything I want to do. They spoke for me. They told people at that place that I was their girlfriend, but they never allowed me to speak. So anytime I eventually try to speak, they send me back and they beat me up.
While the family struggled to cater for the medical bills of a girl who reportedly had severe injuries in her private part due to the abuse, Precious's speech was impaired.
We are taking treatment at the Kwalabu Teaching Hospital, where at the same time she has to be going to Aflao because of the police case, court case, shuffling up and down, and it creates a lot of problems.
She became aggressive and violent at the least provocation, calling for justice to be served.
What I want is that justice should be served. They shouldn't just go scot-free. You see, when they go scot-free, it will continue repeating itself again and again and again, and nobody will be saying anything about it.
Days on, a group of clinical psychologists and psychiatrists have moved in to offer their services to the victim free of charge. Precious met Reverend Father Anthony Amponsa and his team for the first time as a long journey to recovery begins.
She was talking in a way I didn't like. For example, she said for her, she had the chance to kill all men, and speaking, in a way that disturbed me. I was still in a dilemma as to what to do, because the way she was behaving, I didn't like it. Fortunately, the psychologist called, and he came. I was surprised. He came all the way. Oh, may God bless him. And after they met for over almost an hour, but I didn't think she was calm. He talked and, make her feel better that it's not a loss. You cannot take your life. You cannot condemn all men. So I think I'm grateful, and I believe it's going to help her into the days ahead.
The two suspects currently in custody, George Andrew and Maxwell Peter, are expected to reappear the Keta Circuit Court on Monday after investigators pleaded for more time to carry out some probe at the crime scene. But even before the court hearing on Monday, women's advocacy group Women in Law and Development in Africa, WOLDAF, wants mandated state institutions to ensure such victims of abuse and their families are protected as stipulated by law.
It is very important that domestic violence and victim support units should do more for victims and survivors of domestic violence by giving psychological support to victims that comes to them. Not just the victim, but the victim and the family to better deal with the trauma and help the parents or the family to also help the victims or survivors' journey in recovery.
Though it may appear a long road, Precious should come out of this stronger.
Indeed, she should come out of this stronger. Aflao Kidnap did that story for that follow-up. He joins me now in the studio. Aflao, it's good to have you. Good news, it looks like.
Yeah, some good news after a week.
So let's talk about what the psychologists say really went on or is going on with her.
So they say after the initial assessment, they identified that there were a number of issues that were eating it up essentially. One, bitterness, you know, pain, and then the trauma of the 4-month ordeal that she went through was also beating her up. And so she had to be boxed with all these things. She was essentially tired of speaking to anybody about the things that happened to her. It sort of played back in her mind everything that happened to her whenever the issues came up, and so she decided not to speak to anybody. But when she met the therapist yesterday, it marked the start of a recovery process they say should not take quite a long time.
So what was she not doing, and what is she doing now, and why is it even an improvement?
So last week when I was at the Kolibu Teaching Hospital, she was unable to speak. So all the questions that we posed to her, she would either nod up if she agrees with what we were saying, or do this if she disagrees with what we were saying. So she was unable to say anything at all. And we were told by her father that she was writing to communicate whatever she had to say to doctors, to the parents themselves. But from the session yesterday, what we are learning from the psychologist's perspective is that she opened up for over an hour. She was speaking to them. She told them what was happening to her. She told them what she went through over the period and how she wants to get out of it. And so they say she has a strong spirit. She's upbeat herself to be able to get out of this.
To be able to get out of this, we learned that she's been sharing some plans as well. Like, she seemed to want to do something about this situation.
Absolutely, Gifty. So we're told that after the 1-hour session, she says she has even written a poem about assault. And so they are trying to shape it up a bit for her. She says she wants to lead an advocacy against sexual abuse, for example, because she says never again should anybody else go through what she went through the past 4 months. And so she appears to be someone who is very strong, and she will go through this without you know, having a relapse if all things go well, according to the information we're getting from the therapist. And by the way, she is undergoing this session a combined team of psychologists and psychiatrists. So they are looking at the psychological aspects, her psyche, the trauma, and etc. And then they're also looking at the medication, giving her medications to deal with all the issues that she's been going through, especially dealing with the bruises and the lacerations that we are told she had in her private area during the...
Hang on for me, Komla. I'm going to come back to you. We'll follow up on the court case, but let's speak now to women's advocacy group, WILDAF, and they've been following this matter with keen interest. Hello, Abigail.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Abigail. Abigail Adam Hunu, there, she's with WILDAF, joining us for this conversation. Abigail, you've been following the story of Precious, not her real name. And as we speak, we are calling it a bit of a progress, because in the beginning she wasn't speaking, but now she is. WILDAF has also been following up on some legal support for her. Could you tell us about it? How far have you come?
Okay, so we got in touch with the father of the alleged victim to find out what has been done. And we did realize that the case hasn't really progressed, taking into consideration that they have to apply for leave to move the court from where it was to a nearby town, because apparently the police station that arrested the alleged perpetrators granted bail to one of the suspects. So the father came to Accra, went to the police headquarters to go and make a complaint. So I sent the Ghana Police Service, as in the headquarters in Accra, intervened. That led to the case being transferred from, let's just say, Court A to Court B.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you say Court A to Court B, my impression is that you're trying to not disclose where the case has been dealt.
Exactly.
What is there any special reason?
Right now we don't, because the case is still pending before court. We don't want to
expose it.
Let's just put it that way. We don't want to expose it, so let's leave it as it is right now. Okay. But I think it's progress in this instance that the case has been moved from Court A to Court B.
Is there any specific reason why one of the accused was, or one of the suspects was released on bail? Is this even a bailable offense?
Yes, right now all offences under our laws are now bailable. In as much as we would want to say some cases are more serious than others, or first-degree felonies and all that, now all cases are bailable. We still don't know on what grounds that the case, that particular actually suspect was granted bail, and we don't know whether or not the suspect appeared before court, got a lawyer, and applied for a bail application that was granted.
Okay, so as we speak, he is still on bail?
No.
He's been rearrested?
Yes, he's rearrested.
Well, sounds assuring, and I'm sure that if Precious is watching or listening to this, she will be very much rest assured that something will be done to the people who did this to her. But we also know that there has been a challenge in securing psychological assistance for her. What should have been the ideal situation in terms of the role of state institutions, for example?
This case is a bit different in the sense that the victim or alleged victim and the father live here in Accra, and the case actually happened in the Volta region.
Okay.
The doctor is in charge of assisting alleged victims and survivors of domestic and sexual abusers to get psychotherapists for them. But as we speak, doctor is lacking in doing or discharging their duty in that regard.
Financial difficulties, you mean? Are these challenges?
Hello?
Are these challenges you talk about financial challenges?
It's not financial, because the state is supposed to provide therapists and psychologists to help victims and survivors deal better with the trauma. And we actually don't know what seems to be the problem of DOPSU, of not having adequate therapists, because you realize that most of the DOPSU stations that you go to, they don't have an in-house psychologist or therapist or a counselor situated at that station to be able to help the victims. And most of the hospitals and clinics also don't have those services, so to speak, especially when you are outside the major cities and the capital.
Now, what kind of support can WODAF at this stage offer Precious and her family in these distressing times?
On Sunday, myself and a team are going to visit Precious. We want to go and reassure her, together with other survivors and victims of sexual abuse, to let her know that she is not alone. She doesn't deserve what she's going through. And that we are going to do everything possible to ensure that justice is served. And we will also ensure that if they need any financial help, we will be there for the father, because the case, as we speak, is still in the Volta region and they live here. So they have to commute to and from the court jurisdiction, you know. One other thing too that we are doing is to get in touch with the prosecutor that is handling the case, so that they can get to talk to the judge to get a trial date, so that at least, if it is possible, we could get a representative in the town in which the case happened, so that somebody will be representing them in court, and would the Precious and the father would just go through the court because it's a trial date.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. We'll be keeping an eye on this. Thank you very much to WODAF as well for the support. Sad to say, but we have to admit this is not the first of such cases that you're having to deal with at WODAF, but we're grateful. Abigail, there she works with WODAF and they're looking into it. Kamala, what next from where we are?
Right now, we're expecting the case to be called again on Monday, September 16, where the two suspects are supposed to reappear in court. The last time they were in court, the investigators pleaded for some 2 more weeks. they say they wanted to carry out some investigations.
And those 2 weeks have elapsed, haven't they?
They have elapsed. So on Monday is September 16th. That is when the case is going to be heard. Next, we will be following up on this. We're expecting some good news from the court on Monday, so Precious and her family will not have to be going there every now and then,
like
that
Abigail
mentioned, every now and then.
Right.
And we also hope that the therapy that she has begun going through, she'll go through it, it will be sustained, and then she'll essentially get out of the shell that she's in and then live her life again, essentially. I mean, she cannot die because of what happened to her.
She certainly won't die. Kamla Adam there. Kamla, thank you very much for sharing those details with us.